Hi guys, my name is Natalia. I'm a part of the US team, and in this video I would like to give you more details on our blockchain platform, the consensus algorithm that we developed for our platform, and the uCommunity social app itself that we also developed from scratch. I hope that this video would be informative for you and will provide you with essential information that will help you to understand how you can benefit from building your communities and networks based on the US blockchain platform. So the first thing that I want to discuss is what US itself is. US is a blockchain framework that provides a universal portable reputation for every web participant in the network, whether it is an individual or an organization. The next generation of web, called Web 3.0, is based on the interactions in the decentralized peer-to-peer networks. And those networks require a clear, transparent system of trusts, or we also call them system of reputations for every web participant in the network. Centralized platforms sometimes provide those kinds of reputations to the users, but often if you look at those reputations, you may notice that first of all, it's not often clear how they are calculated, and you as a user do not really have a say in how it is going to be calculated. It's mostly governed by a centralized censorship or centralized entity. And other centralized platforms do not even provide a system of reputations for their users. So for example, if you are generating some useful content that is highly rated by other participants in the network, your input in the community is not quantified in any way, and you're not able to receive any reward for that input, while other users cannot really judge your input. They cannot really have this integral picture of your digital identity, of who you are, what you're doing in the internet, and how they can maybe benefit from building economical relationships with you or social relationships with you. As an example of these activities, for example, if you're a developer, then you are committing some code on GitHub, then you're helping other developers on Stack Exchange, but either you're not getting any quantified reputation or you're getting some sort of reputation, but you cannot also integrate those reputations from different digital platforms together. And so the problem that we're solving here is that we're providing a platform where your reputation is calculated algorithmically. So there is no centralized censorship over it. It is calculated transparently, so you understand how it's going to be calculated. Other network users understand how it is calculated. And as a community, you can also influence how it's going to be calculated because you can change the algorithm by voting. Next, I'm going to tell you guys how we achieve this goal. Basically, we achieved the goal by introducing a new consensus algorithm called delegated proof of importance that is based on the original EOS delegated proof of stake. But unlike the EOS IO DPoS algorithm, we introduced several more terms in our reputation rate that are rates for the economic transfers and the rates for social activity. It's important to understand that here we're quantifying incoming social and economic transfers. So whatever other users give to you in the form of likes, upvoting, reposts, etc., or incoming economic transfers is what's going to be quantified, because that is a direct representation of your utility to the network as a user. Okay, I'm also going to explain how the DPoI reputation is used on the platform, and in more details how the score is calculated. So what is DPoI? DPoI is a consensus network algorithm that takes into account three components of a user's activity in the network. First, it is user's stake. Second, it is user's social activity, incoming social activity that comes from other users towards me, for example. And third, it is the incoming economic transfers, like financial transfers, towards the user's account, right? DPoI calculates a user's reputation in the network algorithmically, so it allows for a automatic quantification of a user's utility to the community without any middleman involved. The algorithm implements the principle you enrich the network and the network enriches you through dynamic emission for the activity that you generate. And it's also a really important property of the algorithm that it stimulates users' activity and network growth through the mechanism of dynamic emission that I'm going to discuss in more details. So as I previously mentioned, DPoI reputation score consists of three components. First component, it is a user's stake. Second component, it is a rate that a user receives for the incoming financial transfers. And third component is the rate that a user receives for the incoming social activity. And in the output, you get the overall DPoI score or DPoI reputation in the system. And it is used in the protocol in three major ways. First, it's used during the process of network governance through the voting for block producers calculating nodes, and also for changes in the parameters or changes in the algorithm itself. Second, it is used during the dynamic emission allocation. So dynamic emission takes place when the overall network activity exceeds the previous maximum, and then new tokens are going to be issued in order to maintain a token liquidity in the system. And the emission will be allocated to every user proportional to their DPoI reputation score. And the third way the DPoI score is used, it's used as a representation of user's reputation on a social platform, or like any platform that you want to build based on the US framework as a decentralized application. And a very useful property of this reputation is that it can actually be decomposed, for example, into like just a stake reputation. If someone wants to look at your, stake as a representation of your reputation, or your economic reputation, or maybe your social reputation in the application. And more so, your social reputation can be decomposed further into your social reputations by context, right? So for example, if it's a knowledge base, right, you're posting some useful content and then you tag it by topic, and then someone wants to see, how other users rated you in a certain context. For example, you write on blockchain and then you also write about music or about, traveling and so on and so forth. So they can obtain this decomposed reputation as well. Now I'm going to tell you guys how the DPoI reputation score is calculated. So as you see, there are three components. The first component, the stake component, is calculated in a trivial way. It is simply a proportion of a user's stake in the overall stake pool in the network. The second component, the rate of the incoming transfer activity towards the account, is calculating using an NCD-aware rank algorithm, which is an enhanced version of a PageRank algorithm. It takes into account the level of integration of a user's node into a general network. And a third rate, the rate for the incoming social activity, is calculated using a modified version of a PageRank algorithm. Why we're using a PageRank-based algorithms? It's because these algorithms allow us to objectively quantify the user's utility in the network based on the incoming transactions that the user receives from the other participants in the community. There are a few properties of these algorithms that help us to protect the system from the botnet attacks. For example, NCD-aware rank, because it gives more rate to the accounts that are tightly integrated in the network. It helps to prevent the botnet attacks that are based on the isolated botnet accounts or the botnet networks, because those botnet networks are going to receive less rate using this algorithm. Second mechanism is when we calculate the transfer rates, we have two thresholds. So the transfer rate is going to be calculated only for the accounts whose stake exceeds a certain amount. And only those transactions, financial transactions, are going to be taken into account that exceeds another threshold. So basically this means that implementing those botnet attacks based on transfer rates is going to be expensive for the attacker. Third mechanism is that when we are calculating the rates of the incoming social activity, we're implementing an additional system of trusts that augments the algorithm. This system of trusts is basically trust rates that are given by participants in the network to the other participants in the network, which basically serves as a way to validate a user and say this is a real account. The more trust the account receives from other users in the network, the higher is going to be their initial social rate. And so the higher potentially is going to be their calculated final social rate that they are going to receive. The last thing that I wanted to tell you guys is that the DPoI score decays over time. So if you go on the platform and you participate in some activity and you receive some incoming transactions, you're going to see your score, right? And over time, if you don't do anything, you will notice that your score goes down. Why this is happening? This is happening because we implemented decaying rate for the transactions based on the time period when those transactions were made, right? So older transactions in the network are going to receive less rate during the calculation than the most recent ones. This is also a mechanism that protects the network from botnet attacks, and it is also a way to reward a user for the most recent activity.